All right. Looks like we're currently live. I'm going to go post the stream announcement, and then we'll go ahead and get started. Alright. I think we're good. I'm going to go ahead and jump over to the drawing stream layout, and we'll start getting things set up. Alright, looks like things have loaded in. I apologize for the slightly late start to the stream today. I was trying to get a bunch of things set up, and I realized I needed to go and get things configured a little bit differently for today's stream. But we should be good to go. So today's going to be a little bit different as far as what we focus on. But before we do, since it usually takes a little while for people to file in, I'm going to get started and work on setting up a Bgm track for us to use on the stream today. So I'm going to go ahead, I have the loop plugged in here, and I'm going to try and get everything recorded without having to shift my setup around. I keep meaning to take a picture of my desk setup so you guys can see what it looks like when I try and work on stuff on stream. It's just a logistic nightmare. But I have the loop off to the side here. So what we can do is make sure everything is reading on the input. Bruh. Okay, standardize levels here. It's funny. I usually try and plan out what I'm going to be doing on these streams in advance when it comes to the content. And occasionally I will brainstorm ideas for the Bgm tracks when we're doing things like this, where we're creating things on the fly for the stream. And I had this great idea for a Bgm track yesterday in the evening while I was working on some other stuff. And then I went to sleep and promptly forgot everything I thought of. And then when I was working today and getting ready for the stream, I said, I don't remember my brilliant idea for a Bgm track. It's just gone. So I need to get in the habit of either writing things down or doing some sort of pre-recording or something for an idea. That way I don't lose it. But you'll just have to take my word for it. It would have been a cool idea. So let's see. For our starting Bgm track, we could do a more hip-hop oriented beat. I may experiment a little bit since we have time. Let's see, I'm going to save this track. The one we did for the last stream where I created one would have been the Slither.io challenge stream we did last week. And we did kind of an electronic beat for that one. I kind of want to do maybe a bit more of a slower, kind of moodier hip-hop type beat. Let's see. We're thinking of good rhythms. Maybe something more mid-tempo. And I wanted to do something with BGM snares, but I've noticed that they tend to hit a little bit harder than the other ones just because the sound is more sharp. So if I'm doing something with the, that tends to sort of dominate the rhythm unless I'm really careful about my mic placement and not getting too close or too far. So maybe we'll go with an inwards K for the rhythm. So let's see, for something a bit slower in hip hop, I tend to do one measure repeats. Maybe we can go a little bit longer. So I'm gonna tinker around with some rhythms and percussion lines, and then we'll work on recording different layers, and then I'll do things like add a bass line. So let's see, we could do something like, that's a little bit too much like what I normally do. Get a little bit of stutter, like a double kick in there. Let's see if we can get that recorded, and then see what we can do with that. All right. Oh, whoops. Wonder if I need to fix my settings. I don't remember exactly what we were doing last time we were working on tracks here. So let me do a test. Oh, I'm an idiot. I've got track effects turned on. Forgot that we remixed our beat last time and it left scatter. Yeah. Whoops. All right, let's try that again. Maybe I should put a note here on the main page in case people happen to stop by and wonder why there's no actual drawing on screen. Okay, I think that'll be functional for a starting percussion line. Now the question is, what do we want to layer? I'll probably go 3-track for this one. We could add additional hats. Which would allow us to sort of mix things up if we add some track effects later. All right, let's see. I think that's too fast. Instead of maybe triplets, we can go. I think eighth notes will work better there. We'll drop the track down a little bit, make that just kind of a subtle additional thing there. We need a bass line now. Bruh. Could go guitar to bass. I'm gonna have to think about a bass line to use for this that doesn't sound like every other bass line that we've ever done for these BGM tracks. Oh, hey, what's up, Edward? Welcome to the stream. We are creating our first BGM track to use during the session today. And I'm thinking about what kind of bass line movement we want that's going to be different from everything we've done. See, we'll use guitar to bass. Maybe we could do a more moving bass line instead of notes. I tend to do sustained notes that change and they either go up or down or go up or down. Maybe we can do something that bounces a little bit more. I'm going to turn guitar to bass on. We'll see what we can sort of pair with our two tracks here. The BGM's going to be a little bit loud now while I'm working on it, but then I'll drop it down. So if I'm competing with it, it's just because I'm trying to get everything set up, and then I'll drop the volume down a little bit. All right. I think that'll do for the bass setting. Alright. Hope I didn't record that too loud. I have it dropped down almost as low as it can go, and I have my playback volume turned off just so I can hear myself talk. When I'm talking on mic right now, how's the balance? Because the OBS readout for the BGM is about half, like 60%, with just the music. So if I'm talking now, can you guys hear me? Could potentially drop it a little lower. Sorry, my guitar to bass on again. How's the balance? I have the BGM peaking at about 60% by itself. All right, there. That should boost my mic a little bit. Yeah, my bad. If I forget to turn off, guitar to bass, then you guys aren't gonna be able to understand what I'm saying. My bad. All right, so I'm getting good from Edward. I've never seen you before. Okay, yeah, let me know if you guys have trouble hearing me. And Jess Noah, I don't recognize your name. Jess Noah says your mom. Okay, thanks. All right, we'll keep it there. I'm gonna turn this down a little bit so it's not in my ear constantly. All right, let's get started. Thanks for bearing with me. How you doing, Just Noah? And welcome to the stream. All right, get rid of this. All right. So to explain what we're doing on today's drawing stream, I'm going to be switching gears a little bit from what we've done in the past. I mentioned in the last session when we were talking about upcoming streams that I wanted to get back to the Fusion project. We will get back to that one maybe today if we have enough time. But before we do that, I wanted to focus on something a little bit different today. And today's focus, as you can see on the caption over on the stream layout, is going to be doing a character study. And I think it was maybe 3 streams ago, I briefly showed off one of the old character concept sketches that I did. It was way back. It's probably 2 or 3 years old now. But most of the stuff I've done on stream, in fact, pretty much all the stuff I've done on stream has been creature concept design. So I figured we'd switch things up and look at doing a regular humanoid character render. And so what I've got here is I have a pencil sketch that I scanned. I've mentioned before that I'm primarily a pencil and paper artist traditionally. So I have a character sketch that I scanned in. This one was, again, done a while back. But I want to go through the process of inking and potentially coloring and shading the character concept sketch, just because it'll be a bit of a change of pace from the stuff I've done before. And it'll be good for me to practice because I haven't done regular people type character sketches in a while. So today will be an experiment to sort of talk through that process, and then a good practice session for me to kind of get back in the swing of things and mix things up. So let me load in the sketch layer. I'm going to probably have to drop transparency on this one. I have the contrast turned up so I can actually see the pencil lines. I use a pretty lightweight mechanical pencil when I'm drawing on paper, and that tends to work out fine, but it makes it so that my scans come in super light, and they're a little bit hard to see when I'm doing things like inking. So we'll do about there. I don't need to see everything in stark detail. I just need to be able to see where my lines are so I know what to ink. And when I do these sketches traditionally, and I'm probably going to do this more than once, you'll see a trend of these flat sketches. There's no shading, there's no color or anything like that. Usually because my intention is to scan them and do all my inking and coloring digitally. So it's all rough sketches and stuff like that. Now, I have to remember all the line weights that I normally use for stuff like this. It's been so long. I'm definitely going to be using a... I have to move here. I'm using a pen. This is the G Pen tool in Clip Studio. Line weight's going to be a little bit lower on this one compared to some other stuff we've done. I think that will be functional. Best thing we can do is run through a couple sections and test it out. Or I could scale this up a little. We're pretty much max canvas size. I'll scale the primary sketch up a little bit. bit more space to work. Yeah, I think the line weight's fine here. Seems like my resolution might be low though. 300 DPI, 1920, 1080. It's about what I normally work at for drawings like this. I guess it's not too bad. We'll just use this for now. This will be a test anyway. I think line weight of 3 for hair will be fine. We'll probably go up to 5 line weight for the rest. Maybe what I can do is this. Let me switch to a different older project file. Let me double check my settings real quick. Wow, this is a final render. Give me 1 sec. Oh, that's why. All right. Let me put the main window back. I know why the resolution is screwy. It's because I'm used to working at a much larger resolution. Let me redo the canvas and reload everything in real quick. This will solve the problem. It's been so long since I've worked on one of these, I completely forgot what resolution I normally work at. $42.99 by 3035. Let's do this. Bear with me for 1 second, folks. Okay. This should work out better. Yeah, okay, that's fine. All right, I will remember this for next time. My bad. All right, now the resolution should be better. Yep, that fixed the problem. Clearly, I need to do these types of streams more often so I don't forget my workspace settings. Hey, what's up, Wazzy? Welcome to the stream. You haven't missed much. I've just got through reconfiguring my settings here in Clip Studio because I have a bad memory. Okay, that explains why my line weights were looking so scaled down. Okay, now we can get to actually inking. Well, half an hour just to get the BGM set up and get my canvas configured. Never said today would be a productive stream, just that it'd be a different focus than normal. Alright, should be good to go now. Alright, we'll have to think about things like color paletting and character details sort of as we proceed here. Maybe we can do a yellowish orange, like a pale color for the hair. One of the things that I normally do when I'm drawing these types of characters is I will use a colored line for the boundaries on any of the hair, vice a black outline for all the other details. So we can do the eyebrows first. transparency so I can see what I'm doing a little bit better. What I'll do is I will start to line in the different sections of the hair for this particular stream, because this format's going to be, again, a little different from what we've done before as far as focus. This is going to probably be less of a talking and commentary session, unless you guys have questions or you guys want to talk about stuff with me. But because this process is going to be a little more involved than some of the other stuff we've done on these streams, I'll probably be spending less time just talking and doing commentary. But I'll try not to have just dead silence. That's one of the reasons why we have BGM, for one. But while I'm doing inking, I don't really have to think about too much. I just need to be careful about what layer I'm drawing on. So I can do some sort of general updates and talk about things as long as I don't have to pay too close attention to what I'm doing here. I will say one thing that I wanted to sort of shout out. I don't know if Edward is still here on the stream. He was here a second ago. He tends to kind of come and go. But after our last stream, when we were looking at punching Grey Raven, and I was dealing with somewhat potato performance on BlueStacks when I'm running the game, he suggested that I tweak some settings in the program, which I did after the stream. And I was able to get it running and working, and now I think anytime we need to do a game via BlueStacks, it should run really well. So once again, I mentioned it on Twitter, but I don't think Edward's on Twitter. A big thanks to Edward for the suggestion on how to fix the performance issues, because I think that did the trick when I was running tests earlier, or after the stream. It was running really well, which is good. So we'll get back to punishing Grey Raven probably next week. Ah, you are still here, Edward. Yeah. The virtualization thing fixed it. It actually runs like it's running on not a potato. So next time we look at the fancy waifu game, it will run at a higher resolution and a higher frame rate. And because Wazzy was here at one point, I don't know if she's still here hanging out, but I did also make sure and test other games on the BlueStacks platform just to make sure all the settings were good, and Raid Shadow Legends runs really well on it too, so maybe we'll do an entire dedicated stream where I just play on my free-to-play account on Raid and do nothing but that for an entire 3-hour session just for Wazzy. Oh, you are still here. It's funny. It seems like every other stream, whenever we're talking about stuff, Wazzy threatens to unsubscribe because of something I say or do. One day she's just gonna do it. That's funny. I wouldn't do like a Raid Shadow Legends stream. Not unless it was something like a marathon punishment stream where I have to like play it for 12 hours straight or something. I don't think it'd be interesting to watch. So as funny as that would be, I don't think it'll make good content. So you don't have to worry about that. I'm not sure why the YouTube diagnostic readout here doesn't actively show concurrent viewers in real time. Like, it shows 0 people watching right now, but I could see you guys responding in chat. So it must just lag and periodically re-update the total count, which is weird, but that's fine. Whenever I do these streams, I tend to treat them more like a Let's Play recording, in that I talk about stuff regardless of if I think people are there or not, because if I sit here and only say things when I think there's people watching, then we'd have 30 minutes of dead space with nothing going on, and if people are watching these archive broadcasts later, then it's not going to be very entertaining and interesting to have just dead silence. And talking to some other VTubers out there that are just getting started, I know the idea of talking constantly to yourself essentially is difficult. Fortunately, I've done a lot of Let's Play work, so I'm kind of used to sitting here talking to a camera or a computer screen. Alright, I think that'll do for the hair. I'm going to zoom out a little bit and start lining in details for the rest of the piece here. What I'd like to do on these character studies, again, this is the first one of this format we're doing, so today's an experiment. But in the future, I wouldn't mind doing a procedural compare and contrast here in Clip Studio. So like I mentioned before, I primarily am a pencil and paper artist before I learned digital. And so I'm used to drawing on pencil on paper. But I've also been learning how to do everything from scratch digitally as well. I'm just not as good at it. So maybe we could do something like a drawing challenge, since those tend to yield interesting results, where I have to draw the same character. I draw the character realized in a sketch that I scan, like you see here. That's what this is. And then I have to take it, load it into Clip Studio, and then draw the character completely realized, and then maybe I have to draw the same character from scratch without using an ink sketch in Clip Studio. Maybe we can do something like that, and then I compare, which one is more consistent proportionally and which one looks cleaner. We could do something like that. I also want to do things like some outfit studies, like we've done for the Homeworld concepts. Wazzy says, "Yeah, I appreciate you have the ability to do that streaming solo. So streaming solo is a scary concept." Yeah, I think for a lot of people that are getting into streaming in general, if you're not used to recording or working with a video format, then it can be kind of difficult when you're sitting there trying to figure out how to, one, manage a stream and what you're doing on stream, and two, be able to talk at the same time and engage with people. But for me, again, in my previous life before VTubing, I was used to streaming with a very small audience. And it wasn't doing a lot of stuff like this. And then doing a lot of Let's Play work is how I kind of learned how to be able to talk. Just talk to a camera, talk to a microphone. Now, my ability to multitask and effectively play games, that hasn't improved. I still suck at that. Wazzy says, do you have old art you can redraw? That's another thing that I thought about. Do something like a redraw challenge. One thing I was looking through before I got on stream today, because I wanted to figure out what I was going to be drawing for this session. I actually have a couple large binders full of character concept sketches, and they're rendered in sketch form a lot like this. I do neutral poses, either 3/4 left, 3/4 right, or straightforward, head on, since those are the easiest for me to do concepts when it comes to costume design. And those binders go back probably 5 or 6 years, and the evolution of learning how to draw in this particular style has definitely evolved and changed over time. So that could be something to think about too, where I scan in one of my old, in my opinion, really bad character concepts, and then I have to redraw it a little bit more modern and update things like proportions or costumes or something like that. So yeah, I'll think about that, Wazzy. That's a good suggestion. And then I can put my old art on blast, because again, I wouldn't consider myself super proficient at drawing in this style. That's why I'm practicing. But the older stuff that I've got in the archives is even more rough. For some reason, I drew characters with abnormally long legs. I don't know why. The proportions are really whack on some of them. So I'll go through the archives and see what I can find. I'm just double checking my line weights here. I think this is pretty consistent. Wazzy says, Uraku's old art looking like Clamp characters. I don't know if that's a compliment or an insult. I didn't really watch a lot of Clamp. I know they were a lot bigger in like the, was it late 90s, early 2000s? And this stuff that we're using for the drawing session today. Oh, I see what you're saying. The old stuff that I did with the really weird long-legged proportions would have been like Clamp. I gotcha. Yeah, that definitely wasn't where it came from. But if you're trying to draw some sort of constant through line to other stuff where you see that, it's definitely possible. I also used to draw faces kind of too compact and scrunched together. That's hard to describe without me showing an example, but if I can, well, let's do a real quick illustration of what I'm talking about. If we were to look at a typical anime character head, this is real rough here. I'm going to delete this when I'm done. If you have eyes here, you know, we'll actually put in a nose and a mouth here. This is a real rough estimate of proportion for faces. But for some reason, whenever I was drawing these, and again, I learned how to draw manga-esque style. Started working on it actively maybe in the early 2000s, and then been trying to get better at it ever since. But in some of the older ones, and you'll see this, especially if I do like a artist roast their own crappy artwork. For some reason, I tended to draw the faces like more like this, like really crammed down on the lower part and almost squished into this space here. Which, if you looked at it at the wrong angle, and if you're doing that intentionally for like cute characters or like moe style, that's one thing. But that definitely wasn't what I was going for. It tended to make the rest of their heads disproportionately large, or just disproportionately small, and they would have no chins. That's one thing I noticed in some of those older ones. It's like everything is crammed into the lower third of the entire face, like down here, and there's just nothing up here. It was kind of weird. It functionally worked at the time, but I definitely wouldn't draw out faces like that now. That's fine. Maybe we can do an old art study. The more I think about it, the more I think it'd be interesting to talk about. The problem is I took a break from doing this type of drawing for so long. It's not like I could say the stuff that I do now is light years ahead of what it was back then. I've definitely improved on some proportion things and layouts, but compared to a lot of other artists out there, especially some of the well-known VTubers and streamers, my work is not nearly as good as theirs, and I would never claim that it was. Yeah, if you want to see me roast my own work, then maybe we can do that in a future art stream. What we'll most likely do for this one, same like we've done on the regular drawings where I'm doing them from scratch, I'll go through and do an ink of the entire primary, and then we'll go back and clean up the line work, and then do color assignment after that. It's going to be a little more complex for this one, just because it's a more complicated drawing that we're doing. And that'll also give me a chance to adjust anything that I want to change proportion wise or with the character outfit, anything like that. I'm not really working through this piece in any particular order. But I guess I should do the entire upper body and details there before we move further down, so I'm not jumping all over the place and do everything in order here. think I'm going to come back and I'm going to do something different for the markings here. I'm going to block that in using solid colors. They won't be outlined. We could do that during color assignment. Alright, now we got the gloves. We talked a little bit on previous drawing streams about the drawing process and different challenges when it comes to drawing parts of anatomy and whatnot. And I've talked about it a little bit before. This is probably the most relevant time it'll have come up for stuff we're actually working on. But like a lot of artists, I have a real tough time with hands. That's one thing I need to sit down and practice a lot more of. For the character concept stuff like we're doing here, where it's all like neutral position and nothing really dynamic or fancy, it doesn't matter too much, but hands are tough. Along those lines, like I've talked about a little bit before, another big challenge for me is dynamic movement and poses. Again, for character concept stuff, not too important because we're just trying to use a neutral pose to show off the costume details and character features. But when it comes to dynamic movement, I'm terrible at, really extreme camera angles and movement and whatnot. So that's definitely something I need to practice. Alright, might be able to zoom out and work a little bit further back for the lower body. The outfit I was going for this particular character, this is sort of like light combat armor. So like maybe a martial artist or like a skirmish gear type thing. And for the lower body, this is like a half combat dress, like a durable armored fabric that obscures and covers half of the lower body for movement. Probably not actually practical, but that's not why I do concept work. It's mostly just exploring designs and experimenting around with stuff. One thing, I don't think I've talked about this on stream before, and it really isn't relevant to the stuff we work on, but I have done work with costume design and cosplay stuff before. It's not stuff that looks like this, but the idea for outfit design in theory is something I'm really interested in. Problem is I can't work with fabric. So most of the stuff that I've done has been very simple and or armor based. But as soon as you start getting fabric or sewing involved when it comes to costume work, I can't do that. Wouldn't mind learning, but at this point that would be a pretty big investment of time. And it's not like you can actively go places to cosplay right now because of the pandemic. So most of my outfit design stuff is digitally like this. Okay, let's keep working our way down here. This part of the leg. This section's a bit more like a contoured legging of sorts. And then on the lower legs, from the knee downwards, we have sort of like a bracer set that matches. Well, it doesn't really match pattern-wise in the upper body, but lower leg armor. Do the same on the other side. This is a symmetrical outfit. Keep in mind where our perspective's at. Shouldn't be too difficult to just line everything up and make sure it's not out of whack there. Shore this up a little bit. Taper this off a little bit higher. About there. almost finished with the basic inking layer for the line art. Just have to do the boots or shoes. I think it's a little bit too wide. We have here are sort of these armored shoes with this belt clasp thing that goes over the top. Then we do the same on the other side. Now we'll need to make sure they're not, again, disproportionately missized. But I think that should do it. Now we can zoom out and start taking a look at the finalized line work and see if we need to make any adjustments anywhere. Oh, I just realized I didn't do the eyes. I used to do eyes a little bit differently on character concept drawings like this. I'm going to be experimenting around with some new layouts for the way eyes, specifically the iris and colored sections. I haven't quite decided a consistent way I want to do them going forward. I just know that other artists that I do follow, they have some really cool gradient and layering effects they do with character eyes. But we'll go ahead and rough in the boundaries of the colored section here. When we actually get to color assignment, I'll have to figure out how I want to do the highlights and shading. But okay, let's hide that. Let's save our work so far. Now I'm going to kind of sweep through the entire line work and look for any spots I need to clean up. Oh, Miyazaki says, Konnichiwa. Konnichiwa to you too, Miyazaki, or technically for me, it's konbanwa. Welcome to the stream. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit closer for line work cleanup. It'll blow the line work up a little bit, but it'll be easier for me to see things like overflow sections and other things I just need to touch up. I think what I'll do before we move on to color assignment, I will look at switching the BGM up. We'll see if we can add track effects and switch the beat up that we got so far. One thing I need to remember to do, definitely more so on these types of drawings than the regular creature study stuff we do, is I need to get in the habit of flipping my canvas. Making sure when it comes to symmetry lines and details, it's probably not going to be as big a deal for the rest of the body. For faces specifically, making sure that the overall proportions aren't out of whack if we flip the canvas back and forth. I'm gonna mess around with some of the perspective here and see if it gets cleaner for the different flip versions here. Yeah, that is better actually. Not sure why it made the line art pixelated. I'll have to look at my settings at some point to see if it's doing that because of the transformation commands. But okay, let's keep moving through cleanup here. This way, we may be able to get through the color assignment and shading this stream. We'll have to see. We're just about good to go on the line work. I'm going to create some line boundaries for the actual eyes. That'll help when we're actually coloring things. Alright, let's zoom back out. I'm gonna mess with the BGM real quick. See if we can switch things up. Trying to see if we can get like a double time beat by adding the effects here. I will leave track effects off on the bass line. I think that'll work. I'll give it sort of a kind of galloping beat. Bruh. Alright, let's see. Now then, what I think is the more interesting part of a character concept design phase is color paletting. We will set line work as the reference. And what I do for these types of drawings, I've done in the past, is I will sort of do the color assignment in sections. I'll do things like the skin tones and hair on one layer, and then I'll do clothing and armor on a different layer. That way, if I like one set of colors and I want to mess around with the levels or the hue and saturation and alter things, I can do that separately without having to mess with the whole piece. So we'll do skin and hair first. Where's my cursor? There it is. Alright. So I guess we go top to bottom. What I usually do, and this is just the way I'm used to coloring things, I know a lot of other artists have different methods for how they do color assignment. I tend to one select large areas and then I'll increase the selection size by a pixel and then do fills that way, and then I'll go in and clean up different sections that don't get filled all the way. I've seen other artists do manual selection when they use something like either the lasso or the angular polygon lasso, and they'll section off parts of something that they're going to fill. I don't think there's a right or wrong way to do it. I just happen to notice that different artists have different methods whenever they're doing color filling, color assignment. So let's see, what would be a good hair color? I was thinking a bit more of a lighter pale tone for the hair. Something like that. I need to fix the eyebrow. Smaller sections, I'll kind of manually fill things using the pencil tool. Again, we're just doing flat colors here. Shading will be last once we have all of the color assignment done. And I won't do too much cleanup on the fill the first pass. I think it'll be easier and more efficient if we just go through and fill everything and then do the cleanup at the end. So for skin tones, I'm terrible at skin tones. I tend to use a couple different skin tones and just vary the shades of lighter or darker. I'm thinking medium skin color for this one. Let's experiment and see. It's been forever since I've done this. I think that's a little too like mud colored, not quite what I'm looking for. It's closer. I think I'm going to put the skin tones on their own layer this time. I might need to edit that a little bit and experiment. The hair, I think the hair is fine the way it is, but for this one, I might have to make the hair darker so it's not literally the same tone as the skin. That wasn't what I was going for here. Let's get this filled and we'll mess around with the hair color in a sec. Call this hair. Now it should work. See, I'm getting closer to the kind of peach and pink territory. Do color balance too. That might be a little bit easier for adjusting levels. I was thinking more of like a off blonde or kind of light brown color. That's closer. We might be able to take that shade and then just darken it a little bit. Might be easier if I just use my mouse. That might work. Right, real quick, I'm gonna go refill my water bottle. Let me zoom out here, and I will be back in 1 minute. All right. We're back. Wazzy says, at least the model didn't go headless this time. Yeah, my understanding of the way VTube Studio works is if you move away from the camera suddenly, it'll basically snapshot the last angle right before it loses capture for you completely. So if I lean my head way out of frame and then just walk away, it'll sort of just skew off and then stop, and it'll freeze on that frame. Alright, I think the hair's fine for now. It's sort of a lightish orange color. this layer, I can mess around with the tones a little bit and see. That's a little bit too salmon. That darker shade I think could work. You can always change it later. Alright, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to real quickly move through and I'm going to select fill with the right color. All the different sections for skin tone, and then we will do the same thing for clothing. I think I'm going to stick the clothing all on one layer. That should be fine. If I didn't have such a terrible work setup for my desk, I'd be able to do this really quickly because I could shift select. My keyboard is all the way across my desk because I have my tablet directly in front of me. I have to move my keyboard out of the way in order to be able to be right on top of my tablet. Which means if I want to push things on my keyboard, I have to reach all the way across to the other side of my desk in order to hit a key. I've thought about getting one of those hydraulic arms that you can mount a drawing tablet on, so it'd be floating above my desk. The problem is when I have my tablet tilted downwards when I'm drawing directly on it, doing stuff like this, I have my webcam set up on a freestanding, what is that, like an arm, freestanding support, so that it can actually capture me from my model. If I have a suspended monitor, it's going to be a little higher up and I have to move my webcam. Okay, I think that'll do it for skin tones. There's not really a lot of exposed skin on this particular character model. And I know people were wondering this section right here, if this was like an upper torso boob window type thing. No, this is more like a protective crystal thing that's inset on the garment itself. And this thing here is a clasp for how this thing folds. Alright, now color assignment for the outfit itself. The main layer, I really should pull up some of the other models that I've done off screen so I make sure I don't duplicate any color palettes. But we can go for maybe a sort of pale green, kind of like a military-esque color scheme. Let's see how that looks. I think it's a little too pale. Or it's a little too bright still. I'm thinking more of a gray-green muted color. Yeah, something like that. Okay, now for the armor. Could be sort of like a darker, maybe bronzish metallic color. Let's see how that looks. Yeah, I think I like that look. It looks kind of like a, not quite tarnished, but like a darker metallic color. We'll go maybe a dark gray for the gloves. Alright, someone's texting me. Alright, we'll fill down the rest of the arm bracers, and I think I'm going to make the color scheme for the rest of the armor pieces match this to some extent. I have to go in and do color assignment touch-ups at some point here, but I'll worry about that once we get everything filled. Alright, let's see, we can apply a similar color to the lower leg bracers. Plating maybe like this. And maybe use a darker color for the secondary sections. What I'm probably going to do, it'll depend on how long it takes to finish the shading, which shouldn't take a terribly long time. I do plan on doing alt color palettes for this one, just like we do for most of the drawings here on the stream. Well, that'd be a good opportunity to experiment with other color palettes. Alright, for the shoes, maybe we can do a similar color on the toe of the shoe, maybe a little bit lighter. It doesn't have to be the same shade as the gloves. the section here. I'll come back and clean this up in a second. And for the belt, we can use this darker metallic color here. And we'll use a different color for the buckle, just to sort of distinguish it from the rest. Maybe we'll go a little bit of a lighter color like this. Kind of a mix of muted greens and tan metallic colors for the color palette this one looks like. Metallic silver color for these bracelets on the arms. And for the leg coverings, this is going to be kind of a unique color since it doesn't correspond with anything else in the outfit itself. So let's see. I don't want it to be too distracting. Maybe we can make it a slightly different green shade, like so. Not too bright, still kind of muted like the rest, but still in line with the overall color palette. Alright, just about done with color assignment. For these jewels that you see here, these circular jewels, those tend to function like highlights. So I'm going to choose a unique color for those, and then I'll fill that in on the body, the belt, and then there's some on the lower leg bracers. So I'm thinking for those, maybe kind of a light, bright green jewel color. Something lighter to contrast with the darker shades of the fabric, but not too bright that it's visually distracting. Okay, so this is our rough color palette based on, or flat color palette based on all the assignment stuff. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to sweep through and I'm going to fix all of the sections that aren't filled so that everything's solid, and then we'll take a look at if we need to adjust levels once everything has been filled in on the outfit. I think the skin layer and the hair layer is going to be more or less done. I need to get this section first. And the earring, we'll make that sort of a gold color. Just filling in the eyes. Alright, I'll do the skin layer touch up first, since it's the smallest section. Just the face, the neck, and the hands. We got some sections to clean up on the outfit for sure, but the skin layer looks like it's alright. Hair we fixed partially at the beginning. I think it's mostly just the sections with the very tips of the strands that needs to be filled in and cleaned up. Now we can move on to the clothing. Clothing and armor. Some sections didn't quite fill accurately on the belt. It's easy enough to fix here. Now moving on to the legs, lower body. Shouldn't be too much cleanup to do on the shoes. A couple sections around these parts in the corners, primarily. Okay, I'm gonna do one sweep top to bottom, but I think we just about got everything. Now, I do want to do color fills on the eyes, but I'm gonna have to do the actual shading and everything else for the details on the eyes separately, since I don't know exactly how I'm gonna do them yet. But we'll put the eyes up at the top. color we want for eyes. Could go kind of green blue. Again, I really should pull up my other finished renders and make sure I'm not duplicating color palettes. I can always change it after the fact later, I guess. Actually, I'm gonna go more like off blue. There are some specific parameters for certain character races. It's all tied into the whole lore that are pretty typical colors that are found amongst members of said races, but we don't need to get into that now. It doesn't need to be anything too complicated just for the sake of the exercise today. So I'm going to go with this kind of off blue just as a placeholder, and then when we actually get into highlights, I'll figure out what I want to do with that. Again, I'm not too satisfied with the way I do eyes normally, so I'm trying something different for this particular experiment. Alright, let's zoom out. Now we can go in and do shading. The last technically complicated part of the overall process. And I do the same shading for these types of drawings like I do for my creature designs. It's simple one layer shading, nothing terribly complex. These are a bit more cartoon shading than something like a manga shading or anime shading, where it's a little bit more complex. But that's something I hope to get better at. But like we've done for the creature design stuff, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and do a real rough shade layer in different sections, and then once that's done, I'll go in and clean up the lines on the actual shadows and finalize it. There. And that shade will work better. I don't want the color tones on the hair shading to be darker than the outer lines. It should be close, but not necessarily more distinct. Otherwise, you'll basically lose the line boundaries on the hair. While I'm doing this, there's not a whole lot to be said as far as commentary. Oh, I need to turn on clipping. Oh, I need to. Should double check my layers. We're coloring directly on the hair layer, and that's not what we want to do. There we go. It's a good thing I checked that before I was working on this for 15 minutes and realized I'm coloring directly on my other layer. My biggest fear whenever I'm working on stuff like this. But what I was saying before I realized I screwed up is because this is really not a technically complex and an interesting thing to narrate through. I'm just adding color highlights in different spots and seeing if I missed any colored sections in the color assignment layer. What I've done in the past when we're working on shading, since it's pretty repetitive and not terribly interesting to talk about, is talk about some updates for upcoming stuff on the channel. There isn't going to be another chill stream this week. The next stream and last stream for this week is on the weekend. It's Saturday. And we'll be doing another trial run of Guilty Gear Strive. It's going to be the stress test to make sure, one, it doesn't cause my machine any problems, and two, that my internet connection, now that I've upgraded it, is going to be able to stream the game well. I'll be practicing with potential mains and experimenting around with stuff there. So that will be the last stream for this week. Next week will probably be a follow-up on the stuff we started looking at this week. I want to look at Punishing Grey Raven again. Now that BlueStacks is running better and it doesn't look like it was being emulated through a potato. Should be able to run through more of that. I haven't touched the game since we streamed it, but I may tinker around with the content and try and learn more about what I'm supposed to be doing, and then we'll get into it on stream. So I'm thinking of devoting at least one day for that next week. Nocturne will return at some point. I do need to do a bit of grinding and work on my team in Nocturne. But in the meantime, I do want to look at some other games. The next chill stream, which should be sometime next week, will be tier lists again. I want to do food-related tier lists, the sequel. I found some interesting ones that I think would be fun to talk about. One that I mentioned on Twitter, which I'm sure some people saw me mention briefly, but I was able to find an alcohol tier list. It's not a comprehensive alcohol tier list. In fact, the one I was looking for specifically was hard alcohol, since I personally don't drink beer or wine, so there wouldn't really be much for me to say as far as ranking there. But I did find one that's got hard alcohol on it. Again, not as comprehensive as I would have liked, and I'm not going to create my own because that's a lot of work. So that'll probably be one of the tier lists that we do on the next stream. I also found a condiment tier list. We talked about that a little bit last chill stream, and I got outed for not liking ketchup. But a general condiment tier list is a bit shorter than some of the other ones, but it's got a lot of good stuff on it, so I want to do that one too. So looking at doing that potentially next week as well, and then for the rest of the time, I'll have to see. We haven't done a jam stream in a while. It's been a couple weeks, I think. So we might work in one of those next week. And then I'm also looking around for some other types of challenge stream games to play. We were talking last time because we've done Slither.io a couple times. We've done a You Die, You Beatbox challenge there. But we could do a similar type of challenge format with other challenging games. One that I was thinking about doing on stream, not necessarily in a challenge environment, but we could do a challenge, would be Jump King. That game is, from what I've seen, very hard, and it has led to a lot of streamers going kind of nuts when they try and play it. But we could do something like a you fall certain distance, you beatbox for that. I will look into that as a potential idea, because I do want to do a different game next time, mix things up. Alright, I think that'll do for the preliminary shading on the hair. Now I'm going to go in and do the skin tones. I think we need to go darker. That might be too dark. That's not dark enough. There we go. I'll do is I'm going to do sort of preliminary blocking in of the shading sections here. It's going to probably be a little bit overkill, and then I'll go in and actually fix the lines and everything once we go up, do the cleanup. Probably zoom out a little bit for this. I don't need to be zoomed in super close for larger sections like the limbs and torso. For the shading, we're looking at potentially a light source up into the side, I'm thinking here. Shading is not one of my strong suits when it comes to full renders like this. It's something I'm actively trying to get better at. Okay. Switch the Bgm back. I think that'll do for skin. Now we just need to do a rough highlight layer, shadows on the clothing. And for this one, I'm going to kind of work quickly further zoomed out here because this is mostly larger sections. I'm going to go in and fix all of this stuff once we do the cleanup. So all I need to do right here is, just like we did on the head and body for the skin tones, just rough in where I think the shadows are going to fall. And this will actually be a bit faster than the other sections. I guess I'll just do one color at a time. I was thinking of jumping back and forth and going top to bottom, but it might be easier just if I stick with one section at a time and just shade it all at once. might even be able to go a little bit larger scale for this too, since it's a pretty big section. I'm just doing the trailing edge with the shading here. Same thing on the intersection. May have to play around with the actual shading in that section. I get the feeling it's gonna be mostly darkened in, but we'll fix that later. Okay. Let's do it for the green fabric sections. Now we do the metal armor. Sections. It's going to be probably the darkest shade on the whole drawing. Oh. I think I need to fix this section. Wrong color. Jump down and do the other similarly colored sections like I said I was going to do. Lower part of the shoe. While we're working our way through the last few sections, another thing I wanted to talk about, or at least mention for an upcoming discussion on chill streams, this may be part of the next one before we get into the tier list, since I tend to divide up the chill streams with updates and general discussion, and then we launch into the tier rankings if that's what we're doing. But I did want to spend some time on the next one talking about the recent debut of second generation of the HoloLive talent, the Council debut. And when I started doing this, it was obviously much later after Gen 1 had debuted. And so we haven't really had a chance to talk about VTuber debuts in real time. And I'm a big fan of the HoloLive EN branch in general. So maybe at the beginning of the next chill stream when we're doing this discussion stuff, I can talk about the recent debuts, because I did have some things to say on that, having checked out half of the debut archives. I have to go back and watch the other half. But it's very interesting. Whether you're a fan of the HoloLive larger corporation or not, I think anyone has to at least acknowledge that their ability to curate talent and put together groups of VTubers is pretty noteworthy. It seems like they probably do a lot of really specific vetting and auditioning for getting people to fill the roles. So we'll probably spend some time talking about that, since it's relevant to the VTuber scene, and every once in a while I like to talk about stuff that's going on that I'm paying attention to. So that'll most likely be something that we talk about on the next chill stream. I'd hoped to do that this week, then I realized I didn't schedule a chill stream this week. So that'll be on the next one. The debuts were end of last week or beginning of this week, not too long ago. So I want to talk about it while it's still fresh. And that'll give me time to walk through and watch the archives for the members that I haven't watched yet. I've seen compilation videos and some highlight stuff with all of the members, and I've already started to form some opinions about the ones that I've seen. So I think it'd be an interesting discussion to go and talk a little bit more about that and what I've observed. And on the topic of the larger VTuber corporations and activity out there, I did see that VShojo's hiring. They opened up for auditions last week or the week before. I think it's been a couple weeks now. That's going to be really interesting. That means they're getting ready to do another round of members. I think they said they're not doing numbered generations like some of the other big VTuber groups. So I'm really curious to see who ends up getting in for the next generation of VShojo, since it's one of the major groups I follow. I've got some educated guesses on some of the noteworthy streamers out there that I think would probably be shoe-ins. A lot of the folks they've collaborated with and were friends with prior to the formation of that group, I think stand to make it in if they want. Well, that's interesting. Alright, let's see, we need to do the gloves. We'll need to do the highlights. And then we should be just about done with the shading rough layer, and then I have to go in and clean it up. Oh, do the leggings too. Leg covers. Clasps. Oh, we need to do the bracelets on the arms too. One of my biggest fears whenever I'm working on these things and I'm trying to work relatively quickly is that I'll forget to either highlight or color a section, and then I'll put out a final render or post it somewhere and then realize I've made a mistake afterwards. It's very embarrassing. going to do the eyes. The eyes highlights and shadows very last. Still don't know exactly what I'm going to do for that. Alright, I think that's just about it for the clothing. I forgot to do shadows on the earring too. Stuff like that, like forgetting to add a simple color or highlight layer on just a small detail doesn't seem like a big deal, but then when you look at a final render and it just jumps out that there's something glaringly missing, it's always something that's in the back of my mind. Okay, now we do cleanup. So for the hair, the way I do hair highlights is a little different compared to the rest of the entire drawing. I actually do a... Let's see, where is it? On the right layer? Oh. I'm not on the right layer. Again. There we go. For hair, I do a soft blurred edge for hair. It was just sort of a stylistic choice that I started doing and then just kind of kept it consistent. So what you'll see on the highlighting for the rest of the drawing is I'll do hard edges on all of the shadows. But for hair, I like doing a sort of blurred edge to give it kind of a softer textured look. So the end result looks a little bit like this with not hard lights and shadows. I've tinkered around with doing white highlights and sort of additional lighting things. I'm not going to do that on this one just because I don't want to make it too busy. But for hair highlight lines in the past, I have done things where I'll put like a white, I don't want to call it like a halo looking thing that a lot of manga and anime does for really shiny hair highlights. I've done that. I've done things like where I'll put sort of like highlight streaks going across the different strands, just sort of, that's really messy, not a good example. But I've done stuff like that to sort of mess around with highlights. This one, we'll keep it simple. We'll just go with the darker, soft shadows. Now for the skin, we're gonna go for more hard edge lines on the shadows, just like everything else. So this is the last cleanup section for the whole drawing, and then we'll be done. This is where I was saying we can do some more specific edits as to where the color and shadow lines kind of fall. I do want to have a little bit of shadow at the bottom of the chin here. now we can work a little bit further out. For these larger sections, I'm not going to change the shadows too much. I'm just going to clean the edges up a little bit. Make sure for things like where the different sections intersect, like I'll have to fix this section here, make it join up so it doesn't look like there's a gap in the shadow. Skin layer. Then the majority of the cleanup is going to be on the clothing and outfit and armor, which makes sense because it's the largest section of color. Zoom out and we'll work away from top to bottom on the clothing. Again, I think I can get away with working further out here. Maybe not that far out. Unlike before, I'm going to basically work top to bottom, go through all the different sections at once, since I don't need to worry too much about switching colors unless I find a flat-out error. Working our way down the midsection here. Get to the legs, lower body. This. That highlight starts a little bit further up. think this left shoe is the last section. There's some stuff up here I meant to clean up. Wait, come back here. Okay, I think we're just about done with the shading and shadows. As we sweep through and get ready to start finishing up this particular drawing, I'll see if any other sections I might have missed jump out. Alright, let's work on the part that I've been not looking forward to before we finish up. The eyes. I think one thing I do want to make sure is present here would be the pupils. And I'm doing this on another layer, and this may be multiple layers depending on how I decide to do the shading. Alright, let's see. Probably gonna have to play around with the way the shadows and shading kind of look. Just trying to get a consistent shape for the darker inner part. It's essentially where the pupils go. And then from there, oh, that's too light. What I've done in the past, this is a little bit of a new format for how I've done eyes. I've done sort of a darker gradient around the borders, and then just sort of kind of lined in the different sections, and then added sort of the white light highlights on the insides. What we may do for this one, because I don't want to spend too much time on this since we're starting to run long anyway, I might do a little bit of blurring around the edges just so it's not quite as hard a shadow. I wonder if it'll look decent if we do that. No, I don't like the way that looks for the pupil. I'd rather have that a harder edge. If we add highlights. Here and do something like this. I could probably spend just a whole ton of time experimenting around with how to do eyes. This is kind of similar to the way I've done it for the drawings I've done of my VTuber model. And I didn't draw my actual rigged live 2D model, but for the stuff you see on my title cards with the chibi version of my model, I did draw those. And this is a similar layout that I use for the eyes on those. It's much simpler. Doesn't have layers and a lot of fancy stuff. So I think I'll leave it like that for now, but coming up with a good way to do really complex highlights and shading on eyes is something I really want to work towards improving at. And I want to do that without blatantly ripping off someone else's style. I don't want to do that. But for now, I think that'll be functional. This is kind of a final status check on our design, and then before we wrap up for the stream today, we'll do some alt color palettes. Alright, everything dropped into one folder. Okay, good. So design is not terribly complex. I didn't want to go super busy with the outfit on this one. A couple of the other sketches I have scanned in are much more detailed, and we have kind of weird armor patterns and all sorts of stuff. But I figured we'd stay simple for this first one, just to give kind of an example of how I draw this type of stuff. And I don't know what this character's name is. If you look at the sketch, there's also different renders of the face. We won't do those today. Yeah, it could be something I do later off stream or whatnot before I do the final render. But for now, let's make a couple alts, experiment with some color patterns, and then we'll wrap up. Alright, we'll call this one 2. I wonder if I can edit multiple layer levels at once. No, you can't do that in Photoshop. Nope. That's a shame. I don't know if that's some sort of advanced command for drawing programs, but I've always wondered why you can't do something like change color levels and balance on multiple layers at once and have it apply. But that's okay. Only thing we're really going to be messing around with is probably hair and outfit. So for hair, we go up to 56, or we'll go 62 for a more bright green. This is one of the colors we were looking at initially. This one's 62. It's not going to change the color of the lines unless I go in there and do that manually, which is, that's fine. And then we'll do the eyes last. I'm going to merge the eye layers together just so I can change the colors all at once. But for the outfit, and you guys can't see it on OBS, but what I'm doing is I'm going into the hue and saturation, and I'm just playing around with the sliders. It's not the most advanced way to do color edits, but it'll get results relatively quickly without wasting too much time. So we can go up to 92 on this one. didn't know you can rotate the canvas that way. That's not really something I'm used to doing when it comes to drawing. I probably should rotate my canvas more to get my line strokes a little more consistent, but it's not a habit. I need to be better about doing that. All right. Merge the eye layers, and now I can just change the colors all at once. Let's go for a really different contrasted color. Let's go purple. We'll go full anime. Actually, full anime would be heterochromia with different colored eyes. I do like the idea of different colored eyes. I just think it's a little bit played out and overdone, which is a shame because it's a cool concept, but you see it all over the place. You see it in regular media, you see it in a lot of OC content. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just, to me, it's a little bit gimmicky now. All right, we'll do one more alt layer or alt palette. Let's call this one 3. And for this one, for the hair, let's go the opposite direction on the hue and saturation. I'll go for this kind of purplish color, -170. Okay. And for the outfit, let's see, we had sort of mix of greens and browns, so let's go for something that looks noticeably different. Well, that's a really garish color combination. It's a bit too bright. Go for this sort of mix of kind of lightish pink and darker purple. This isn't a color palette terribly common for this particular character's race, but that's not the point of alt palettes. Alt palettes is just to come up with different color schemes. So we go -157. All right, now for the eyes. Now we can go red. Reddish brown. That's kind of an unusual color. All right, let me save everything here. We'll do sort of a roundup of everything we did here, and then we'll jump off for the day. Collapse all this down. So to real quickly show where we started, the initial scan sketch that I used for the basis of today's drawing is what you see here. For to compare them side by side, well, that works, I guess. The inked version is pretty much identical. I didn't change anything when I was inking this one. If I wanted to, oh, we didn't do the block lettering. Okay, that's something I can do in post. What I was going to do is add in the block lettering color characters on the outfit up here on the body and on the leg. I can do that in post. That's not terribly difficult. That's just color selection. But in the final render, I'll make sure and add that so it's not left off. But aside from that, the overall proportions, outfit, all the specific details in the character itself weren't changed dramatically from the initial sketch. Like I mentioned earlier, the other face render is something I'll have to think about doing some other time. But if we bring back the alt palettes, I think the end results were decent. This is something I haven't done in a while, so it's good to sort of get the rust off and get back in the habit of doing inking and color assignment for something that I'm not drawing from scratch. I do want to revisit this process again in the future. Another potential way to incorporate this type of content on the channel would be doing speed drawing videos. And if I did that, it would be off stream, and it'd be the exact same process that we went through in real time here, with me dropping a sketch in, doing the preliminary inking, color assignment, shading, and everything start to finish, just at high speed, probably with music or something. So the overall drawing process would be condensed down considerably. So I may consider doing that as well. We'll probably switch between male and female models for the next one. I'll be going through the binder of characters that I want to draw and render here on stream, and we'll sort of jump between the different character types, genders, and outfit types. And like Wazzy suggested earlier, for a future art stream, maybe we can do something like a redraw old cringy art, which I think would be fun. You guys can look at how much worse these types of drawings of mine used to be, and we can try and do something like a reimagining or redrawing of a character. That could be fun. And I still haven't figured out how I want to post the results of all these drawing streams, since we've got several streams worth of stuff that is done, needs to be put into like a final render template, but aside from watching the stream archives, they're not posted anywhere. So I do have an Instagram. I'm thinking about just dumping them there. That way I can link that from Twitter, so if people want to see the results of our art streams and the final products, they can jump over there and look at what I've posted. But that'll be something I need to get done soon. My priority right now is finishing all of the recording and information for the Bgm tracks, because one thing I haven't talked about, I'll mention it here briefly. We talk about it again later in more detail. But I did set up a Bandcamp account, and I have it set up. There's nothing in it at the moment because I'm still trying to figure out how their formatting and everything works for their content. But once I upload the Bgm tracks, they'll be listed there, and I'll do a post probably in YouTube video format and on Twitter that the stuff's live. And for you guys that are curious about using my Bgm tracks for other content or whatever, you'll be able to get them. And again, like I mentioned before, I'll be putting them up for free. And Bandcamp seems like it's got a pretty intuitive interface to do that. So once I finish uploading and get everything standardized, I'll blast out a notification. And if you guys are curious about that, you can check it out. That's currently priority over finding a spot for the art, because the art's not going anywhere. But I have gotten a couple questions from folks about the Bgm tracks. So that's one thing I'm working on right now. I'm about halfway through getting all of the data loaded and plugged in for the first Bgm collection. So yeah, that'll be coming in the next week or so, depending on how much free time I get. But I think with that, we will go ahead and wrap up the drawing stream for today. And this one didn't go as long as some of our other ones, but I think it was good to work through the process and sort of try out a different drawing format. We'll be doing more of these character studies in the future, and I'll be figuring out more ways to experiment around this layout and format. So once again, thanks to all the folks that stopped by and hung out. We will be getting back together relatively soon for more of this stuff. So if you have any other ideas or things that we could potentially work into the content, as always, let me know. But until the next time, I will catch you guys later and have a good evening.